Kia ora koutou, welcome everybody. Symbols are one of my favourite things, and I'm following on from Simon's topics earlier in the year, but just looking at it from a different angle. So symbols and self-transformation. I want to share you first some of my own books that I've read over the years, and afterwards they'll be placed on the table where Simon's sitting at the moment. This one is not so helpful, I don't think. It looks lovely. It's called The Mystical Spiral by Jill Pearce. It's quite an older book. This one I like very much. Man and His Symbols by Carl Jung. There's a lot of information in there. Animals Speak by Ted Andrews. This is about your spirit animals, if you believe in that kind of thing, but also it's just really interesting to read, even if you don't. So if I got here. So I'm still going here with books. I thought I'd just do it first and get it out of the way. This is a very beautiful book, Sufi Expressions of the Mystic Quest. So most of these I've had a long time. Yantra, the tantric symbol of cosmic unity. Also another very good book. Still going. Kundalini Yoga for the West. Excellent book. It's got a whole lot of exercises to do. I never actually got all the way through them, but I had to do some. And the last one is a very old, because it's all taped up, mandala book, which has got a very 60s, 70s vibe to the pictures and the way it's written, and kind of psychedelic as well. Okay, so I've written some notes in case I forget anything. So first of all, this is a huge subject, so I'm just going to touch on the surface, really. I'm a student. I always say I'm not an expert on anything I present. So let's go to the second slide. Whoops, it's not doing anything. I meant to go up or down. Oh, there we are. Don't know why it wouldn't work for me. So a symbol is a thing that represents something else. It can be a mark, a sign, a picture. It can be simple. For example, a point, a dot is a symbol. A complex one would be something like a mandala. They can be from nature or man-made. There are a multitude of symbols. From written, I'm going to read each screen because sometimes when somebody talks over the screen, you cannot actually get time to read it. So I'll read them to you, and there's not a lot on them. So a symbol can be simple or complex, from nature or man-made. There's a multitude from musical notes, sacred geometry, mandalas, and religious symbols. They can be universal, cultural, or deeply personal. So each religion has its own particular symbols. I will touch on a few of these. Some forbid physical images of God, as Islam does, as they consider a deity as being beyond our comprehension, so you cannot actually draw it or represent it. And as I go through this presentation, I'll show you ways that symbols aid our self-transformation. I've had to limit the number presented. Here we go. Let's see if I get it right this time. Oops, wrong one. So how do we use symbols? So I'm just going to go and read it first. We can use them for concentration, meditation, to illustrate our own spiritual journey, seeing signs along our way, to give a deeper understanding beyond words, to explain life. And you can walk into a symbol like a labyrinth or a forest. So let's just have a closer look at those dots. So concentration is a step before meditation, where you gaze at a symbol or you think about it. And first of all, you think about the outer aspects. So years ago, I was doing more concentration. And for example, you might have an apple and you're thinking about, it's green or whatever color it is and where it's grown. And then later on, you might think, oh, it's related to New York and it's got seeds. And so what's the potential? And you'll start looking more deeply at the symbol. So in meditation, we're going deeper and we're seeing beyond the surface of what is really obvious. So a symbol of our journey is the path, and each of us has their very own path. You can be very focused and have a straight path. You'll find me using my hands. Or your path might be meandering. We can see our path going upwards. We can see our path sometimes even going backwards at times. And we have obstacles and challenges to confront and deal with. So signs along the way. So when I wrote this one, I was thinking about Jung's theory of synchronicity. When something suddenly appears that is out of the blue, but is relating to something of the moment, like you might be, I was studying chakras and I found a chakra dance CD in a shop, or you might be listening to a song or the radio and there's suddenly a lyric will be exactly what's happening in personal life. So things like that. Well, you might have a lucky number. I've got a friend actually who sees signs and number plates in front of her. So there can be physical signs of the deeper non-physical reality. Some people believe if you see coins on the ground or feathers, you're in the right place at the right time. So I find that symbols speak to my whole self rather than words, because words, or they can paint a picture for you, but they're really relating more to your brain. So symbols speak beyond the mind and they go to the heart as well, more quickly, which balances us. They help us move into mysteries and new understandings of things that maybe we couldn't see or we didn't even know we knew. And they interact directly with our intuition. So I'm going to talk about the labyrinth here on the screen, not on your screen. Actually, on the weekend, I was at a sisterhood day, and there was sisterhood day, and one of the women there has got her own labyrinth at her property. She lives in America, Zoom. I thought, wow, how amazing. It's a heart-shaped labyrinth. I'd love to see a picture of it. So in Wellington, if these are still there, I know there's a labyrinth you can walk at a church, in a church garden in Johnsonville, behind the swimming pool. And I think you could just go and walk at any time because there's a sign. I saw it the other day. And I thought, I must do that. I don't know how big it is, but I didn't have time that day because I was meeting somebody. There used to be one at Frederick Wallace House, which became a private property. So I don't think you can walk that one. There's one at Lower Hutt Hospital. So you can go and walk that one. Quite unusual being outside a hospital. And we used to do it at yoga days. My yoga group doesn't do days anymore, but a person got a big cloth and they drew the labyrinth on the cloth. So you can do it in a variety of ways. They're found in churches, but not in New Zealand, I don't think. So what
you temporary, like we did one
right
in the church I was at, but it was actually duct tape stuck to them.
Yeah, you can do that. Yes.
I saw that at St Paul's Cathedral. They had one because they've got a huge space, so they put one on the floor for a few months.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah. Thank you. So for those that don't know what you can do with a labyrinth, there's an entranceway and you walk it. You can have more than one person walking it if it's big enough, but you're mindful of anybody who's ahead of you. And you go on with a question, if you've got a question, and you wait in the middle until you've kind of got an answer to it. You meditate in the middle, and then you walk out again. And it's quite a profound experience if you haven't done it. It's really, really lovely. I'd recommend it. Oops, wait a minute. Which one am I on? So symbols can be used to explain. So here I've got on this slide, numerology and cosmology together. So numerology is the esoteric meaning of numbers and the deeper meaning of numbers besides the maths. And you can do it with numbers themselves, but also letters can be given numbers and you can work out the meaning of your name, for example. So it's really interesting. It's similar to astrology. So cosmology is the origin and development of the universe. And we're just going to go through these things here fairly briefly. So 0 is the void, and there's a void in a lot of different religions, like in Maori, their creation stories have a void at the beginning. So the void is the unmanifest universe. Everything's potential. Everything still in the dream state of God, as mystics would put it. So Brett and I were talking about the colour black coming in. So black is not a bad colour. It can just mean potential. Number 1 is the point that I mentioned earlier. So the point, it can be the beginning, the one, it's still unity because it's just one. And the beginning of the universe before it expands.
Yeah, and the second drop down.
Yeah.
Actually talks about exactly that symbol, just sort of pointing it.
That's right. Yeah, thank you. Number 2 is when it becomes a line. It's a line with a point at each end. And so the universe, if you're using it for cosmology, has begun to expand. At a human level, you're reaching out to another person, you're going beyond yourself. But it also represents duality. Our planet is very dual, you know, good, bad, night, day, light, dark. Number 3, this comes up in a lot of religions, many religious trinities, like Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. In the pagan religions, it's maiden, mother, and crone. And just in our family, father, mother, and child. So number 3 is an important number. Number 4, and we're moving slightly off cosmology at times here. So number 4 is related to the base chakra at the base of the spine. It represents planet Earth, foundation, and the limits of physical life. So we often talk about, oh, that person's in their box. So they're limited, they're in their box. They're not thinking outside of the square. Yeah. The cross is another representation of 4, with the vertical line being the descent of the divine spark, Purusha, and the supreme being. And the horizontal line being physicality, matter, nature, prakriti. So the spirit coming into the natural world. So the next 2 symbols are 2 of my very favorites, your now favorites. One of them is a circle. It's a sacred symbol for many cultures. It can represent many things. It's the actual shape of a planet and the physical sun, but it can represent the spiritual sun, the solar logos, the solar divinity. It can represent diversity within unity. And it's a symbol that's often used because you can sit in a circle. So when you're sitting in a circle, I find when I was teaching, when I was a classroom teacher years ago, I often sat the children in a circle because they're all equal. And you might be the leader at the time, but another child might be the leader. So I think it's a really lovely symbol, the circle. Sometimes in a circle, you might have a guru or a teacher in the middle of your circle. And when the circle's marked with its 4 quadrants, it can represent many things like life cycles or seasons. You'll find I keep using my hands. The movement from the top of the circle is like the involution of spirit into matter, but when it ascends, it's matter returning to spirit. And we're still on this one because we're up to spiral. So the spiral, again, is found in many cultures, from Celtic stone carvings to Maori tattoos. It's another symbol for the spiritual path, particularly indicates where we are on our journey if we look at the spiritual collectively. So if you're looking at a spiral shape and you're thinking about somebody's journey, you know, somebody supposedly has a head up here and somebody is down further on the spiral, you don't always understand each other. The person who's more evolved, or I like the word unfolded, have more understanding, they'll understand the person at this lower level, but the person at the lower level won't understand the person that's further on. Yeah. So when I was first teaching again, we had the spiral curriculum where you revisited items over time and you got a deeper meaning. I don't think they do that anymore. And it's found in nature, in shells, on the beach, even our DNA. It's a symbol of eternity because unlike a circle, a spiral can just keep on going indefinitely. And we'll revisit it when I get to chakras. Okay. So another interesting, a lot of symbols to think about on your own spiritual journey is symbols from nature. So I chose a lovely beach seat here. And I was starting with the sun and the moon. So as a yoga person, I'm going to talk about that. So in yoga, the sun, or the solar positive energy, was called Pingala, and it's on the right side of the body. And it also relates to the right nostril. And the moon, negative or receptive energy, called Ida, is on the left side of the body and the left nostril. So I don't know if that changes if you're right or left-handed. I've got no idea about that. So these also spiral around the spinal column. For healers, for anyone that does any spiritual or any kind of healing really, the right hand is the one that gives out energy to people. The left hand is receiving. So if you're empathic and you're picking up, sensitive people might pick up that somebody's unwell and they can feel it in their left hand. Oh, does it? Thank you for that. So we can also see that physically the sun shines its light on the moon, so the moon's receiving and it becomes like a mirror. So a mountain. A mountain is not only a physical object of power and veneration for many people, like Mount Kailash, I think it's in Tibet, but I'm not sure, might be Nepal on the border. Buddhists circumnavigate it. They don't want to conquer it like Westerners do, always want to get to the top of something, but they circumnavigate it instead, which I think is rather lovely. So my own theory is that countries have chakras, energy centers like our bodies, and these are the mountains. So all the mountains in New Zealand are our chakras, and the ranges are like the spinal column. So spiritually, they can be seen in a variety of ways. Often we feel as though our path, as though we're climbing a mountain. You know, some days you think, oh my goodness, you know, it's a tough day today. And again, some of us might be, our journey might be a direct route to the top of a mountain, but other people are spiraling up their mountain and not doing the hard direct route. Some of these I'll just touch on very briefly. A waterfall, you can imagine you're under a waterfall in your shower, is like purification. Yeah. So people often talk about cocoons and butterflies. It's another great analogy for our spiritual journeys. At the start, we're like little children. We're like caterpillars. We're voracious eaters, just soaking up every experience or reading every book or watching every podcast or whatever. And that slows down over time. And for some of us, we go into a cocoon and we metamorphosize into the beautiful butterfly of enlightenment. And I think these people are probably hidden. We probably don't know who they are because they'd be very humble. Flowers. So the rose is used in a lot of different cultures. It's a symbol for unconditional love. The lotus is another important one. Many of us have heard the story of the journey going from the mud through the waters until at the top of the waters emerges this beautiful lotus. The 4 elements. So the 4 elements can be seen a different way than just the actual physical elements. So earth, sustenance, being grounded. We all know how important it is to be grounded. You can meet some very spiritual people who are just way up here and they're not grounded at all. Knowing your place in the world. I really like the Māori word turanga waiwai, knowing your place to stand. And some of us take a long time to find that. Water stands for the astral plane, the dream world of constant change. And quite often a ship on a water can also represent your journey. Air, so communication, travels, pranayama, breath techniques in yoga, or for meditation. Here's a question for everybody. So why are we here in Wellington, in the windiest city in the world, with all this air? It's amazing. Fire. Fire often represents burning away of what you no longer need. When you're undergoing change, whatever it is. So it might be giving up a job or a relationship or moving to another country or town or even just shifting house. Trees. I love trees so much. I used to love trees so much as a child. If anybody chopped a tree down, I would cry. Yeah. So I think of trees as benevolent beings, our ancient ancestral home, and they're not appreciated enough in the modern world. They're steadfast and true, they're life-giving. Most don't hurt us. They can be a symbol for, sorry, I'm actually thinking of something else. So a tree can also be represented as a reversed tree, where the roots are towards the sky and the branches are below. So those are representing people who are really living their basis of their life from their spiritual self and bringing it down into their physical reality. They're connecting with Ranganui, Sky Father. Islands and tides. So sometimes we feel like an island. People that are old enough to remember, and some of us are here, the Paul Simon song, I Am a Rock. Yeah, and he's actually not happy at all, but that's what he's thinking he's like an island. And sometimes we feel like that. I see life as kind of like an island where I was thinking of people, they might flow away like a tide and then they'll come back into your life. People come and go a bit, don't they? It's really interesting. People and places come and go in our lives. Cobwebs. So cobwebs can represent connectedness, manifestation, because spiders make their own webs and they need to remake their web every day if they're a spider that makes webs to catch their prey. So quite often we have to make new beginnings and starts in life, and sometimes we have to go completely back to scratch, right back to the beginning. So dreams and objects. So for me, dreams have been very important, and I occasionally write interesting ones down, and every now and again I'll have a look, and sometimes I don't understand the meaning until years later. It's really, really interesting. And they're highly symbolic. I do recommend keeping a diary of dreams. They speak to us in pictures, and as we live in the modern world, they can be like a TV or a movie playing out in front of you. Or you might be in it, of course. Sometimes you're more of an observer. A house. This is a house in a dream. So unless it's a particular house, the house can represent yourself. So if you're, this is from Jung, really, if you're dreaming about a basement, it's about your lower nature. Dreams can be quite literal. So if the house is dark, are you in the dark about something? Does it have windows? All those simple things like that. Something else I was going to say, I think I've forgotten. Never mind. Something I haven't written here is sometimes you can be very happy in your daily life and you'll have an unhappy dream. So sometimes your dreams are about balance and you'll dream the opposite of how your daily life is going. It's quite interesting. Now, somebody might be able to help me with this one afterwards. For many years, I dreamt about scaffolding. There's one for you, Brett. Why I was dreaming about scaffolding, I've got no idea. So revisiting some of the books, and the book Animals Speak by Ted Andrews talks about their life and cycles and how they are, but also their values, like a wolf is loyal, all of those kind of things. An owl is wise. It's a really lovely book. You can have a baby in your dream. So a baby can represent innocence, but sometimes they talk. Has anyone had that? I've had babies talk in my dreams. So I think they're being wise messengers to you. If they're talking and you wake up and you think, oh my goodness, that's weird. That baby just spoke to me in the dream. And they can't do it in daily life.
Carl Jung said that he had a couple of dreams himself of children. He said often as he saw as he was getting old as a wise man, he saw that the wisdom was actually in the young, in the youth part of himself, the inner child. And so he wrote famously in the Red Book, "Oh my goodness, is my God a child?"
Oh, I haven't heard that one. That's lovely. Yeah, thank you.
For American teachers, they're a baby that they talk to while it was gestating and they don't talk.
Really?
So I wasn't expecting you to say
But
that.
it's keep talking to it.
Thanks, Brett. So the last one on this slide is a key. So a key in a dream is you're unlocking a new mystery. You might be going through a new door into a new experience. You might be having a new venture or new understandings. And how we're going for time, I think we're pretty good actually. I might be going a bit fast. That's what happens. That's something you're doing.
Given, like if someone opened with a key a set of drawers, and then he gave me a couple of jewels.
Oh, that's lovely.
Readings.
One of the chakras is the jewel chakra, the solar plexus chakra, so it might represent that. Obviously something precious and special.
Something valuable.
I think so. You'd have to figure that out yourself. The dreams are very individual. I do have a dream dictionary, which is actually very good, and I could have brought it along. I didn't tonight, but sometimes it's not in the dictionary. Either what's happened in your dreams not in the dictionary, or what the person has written actually doesn't apply to that dream. So you've kind of got to meditate or think, what does that mean? And it doesn't actually matter if you don't work it out immediately.
And we've got to remember that these people are actually traveling while they're doing it, that everybody in the dream are you.
Yeah,
everybody is coming from your consciousness.
That's right.
The children, they're all yourself.
They can be, yes. I don't know if that's completely right, but yes. Yeah, that's true.
And there's a very famous reference book called, I think, The Dictionary of All Symbols and Myths by G.A. Gaskell. Jeffrey Hudson even recommended that. The interesting thing about that is that it goes quite deep and touches on philosophical symbolism. So people might be interested in that. The philosophical dimension.
Yeah, so I could write it down maybe.
I think it's in the line. What was the title? A Dictionary of All Symbols and Myths by E.A. Gaskell.
That sounds good. Thank you for that. That would be interesting.
So many of these things are context dependent and individual to the person.
Say that again, sorry.
So many things are individualized, contextual to the person in the dream.
Mm.
The irony is that for so many people, certain symbols can come up in similar ways.
They do. That's true.
Nice.
The collective one.
There's a big one.
Yes, we want to.
Yeah, in the room, you see, going out, you know, just like.
Yeah, there's these ideas of dreams, like lots and lots of people.
Talk to here, Blake. I haven't been repeating what.
I was saying that dreaming of teeth is a very common dream. that
Yes, it is.
a lot of people have. It's an example of just a very common experience.
And losing things, walking barefoot is another one. You've lost your shoes or you've
Flying.
lost something.
Flying.
Yeah, flying.
Mm.
I could only like step onto a human, spiders again.
Oh, okay.
So why?
Well, spiders is another common one
Mm.
as well. Showing up.
Yes,
Yes, I was about to say, showing up. Being up like a primary school, just in.
We're talking here about different things and dreams, from nudity to losing your teeth, and some embarrassing things in real life, but in your dream it's okay, isn't it?
It's the time.
So our next slide, and there's a couple to go. And then at the end, we've got a little exercise to do. So religious symbols. So if you follow a particular religious path, then they're very meaningful for you. If you're a theosophist, you might be remembering symbols and teachings from past lives. So I'm going to talk a bit about mandalas, but I'm not going to cover all the others here. But you might find religious symbols in writings, in sculpture, inside a building, on a building, and art, and objects, like the Vajra and the bell. So I'm going to talk about the Vajra and the bell shortly, which is on, I bought my own. I now have my own, and my books are going to go on that table over there too. So anyone who wants to have a look is welcome to have a look. So the word mandala, people sometimes pronounce it differently, mandala, means circle in Sanskrit. So it's got quite a simple meaning. But again, it's found in more than one culture, from Buddhism. So this is a Buddhist mandala here, to Native American Indians. They can be used for ritual, again for meditation, and for healing. So I know when I was reading the mandala book, I think it's the Navajo Indians put people in a circle that's not quite closed, and they sat them, I don't know if they still do this, but would sit them in the middle for healing and do ritual, whatever they needed to do. So if you have a look at the picture of the Buddhist mandala, I'm just going to say a little bit about it. I'm not hugely knowledgeable, but it often has a palace with portals or doors. There's often 4. So if you have a look, there'll be 4 entrance-ways. And around the edge, there'll be kind of fire, or there'll be something of protection around the outside of the mandala.
What was the significance of entrances?
I don't actually know. It might just be the 4 elements.
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure why it's 4.
Directions as well.
It could be all those things. What was that, Ellie?
No, there's a 4 main bodhisattvas that protect.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, it could be that. Yeah.
Often they're associated with directions.
Precisely, yeah.
It might have multiple meanings. I mean,
Often these things do have, that's why they're in picture form, they say 1,000 words.
that's it. I know if you're meditating on it, I have read about it, that it's really quite complex. Buddhism is really complex. So there's often deities guarding the portals. And a few years ago, some Buddhist monks came to Lower Hutt and they made some sand paintings. Some of you might have been there. Were you there,
I
June?
did a whole tour of New Zealand, I think, because I saw them do it.
Oh, how lovely.
Well, I saw that the mandala was almost finished when I saw it, and then a couple of days later, they went out and put the sand in the harbour.
Yeah. So often it's they make this beautiful mandala, and then part of Buddhist philosophy is how impermanent everything is. So they sweep it away. So we're going to move to the next
Carl
one.
Jung said,
Sorry,
the
go on.
mandala, he realized, in his realizations, he saw it as a symbol of the totality of the self. And the Jungian self is much more, not just like an ego or a body, but something connected to reality as a whole. And so you can see life itself and just this mandala, the completeness of it, and all its parts contained within something that speaks of the entirety and completeness of past, present, future, here, now, all levels of reality at once.
I don't know if I can repeat that, but Blake was just saying how mandalas represent the whole self and different levels of reality, future, past, and how complex they really are and complete. Yeah.
I find that one to say it's quite interesting because everything that there is balanced, the two, the four, the round, the colour, everything in the way it's done is really balanced. And it all leads to, I sort of think the colour red goes nicely over, but it's like we're going down, 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 and you're going down through floors and floors and floors and more levels to that very little one in the middle. Yeah.
Or it could be seen as going up. Either way.
Well, I said it's just like it's so deep that it's you're going across there and you keep going down from one level and not quite sure what's right at the bottom and through the other side, but I think something like that.
So Louise has just mentioned how the mandala is on a lot of different levels. If you look at it, it seems to be stepping down and down and down into the middle, and also how balanced it is, which I think is a contrast to actually our daily lives too. Often things are not very balanced in our daily lives.
Maze, like
Labyrinth?
the labyrinth, yeah, I guess they're quite connected in some ways to the labyrinth.
I think so.
Yeah.
And also, I forgot to say earlier that sometimes those words maze and labyrinth are used interchangeably, but when we think about a maze, it's what you get lost in.
Yeah.
Whereas, and you've got to find your way out, whereas a labyrinth's got a definite path that you can follow. So they are a little bit different.
The interesting thing about the labyrinth as well is you don't go just straight into the center, right? You explore outwardly and every element of the labyrinth before you come to the center. And I think there's something deep about that too. In life, you have to explore all the angles of things, just like in this mandala. You can't really see the truth without seeing its various elements and perspectives. And I think that's part of what the labyrinth helps show you, and the same thing here, I think, at least that's one thing I was thinking.
So Blake was just talking about the similarities between the mandala and the labyrinth, and how the labyrinth, you just don't go straight to the center, but you circle the labyrinth in a more deeper way, looking at all angles and perspectives before you get to the center. Interesting way of looking at it. Thank you. So I think we're nearly up to our last. Now I've got 2 slides to go. So the Vajra and the bell Vajra is the Hindu word for it. Dorja and bell is the Buddhist. They can be used for ritual, and you can also use them for meditation. So the bell is held in the left hand and the Vajra in the right hand. So they have got, again, many complex layers, but I just remembered the basic ones. So the bell represents, amongst other things, wisdom, compassion, understanding and discrimination, while the Vajra means skillful means and decisive action. And they also links to yoga, because one of the yoga poses, a very simple yoga pose where you're sitting kneeling, is called Vajrasana. So thunderbolt pose, even though it looks very ordinary, it's called thunderbolt pose. So I find it useful to share personal stories. So I'm going to share one here. So many years ago, I lived in Palmerston North in a haunted house, which I won't go into, but I won't today. No, it's a long story. And the house was hit by lightning. We weren't hurt because it hit the telephone when nobody was on it. Made this huge bang, like a bomb. It was a really loud sound. And then about the same time, I was about to leave for Wellington. I heard, and I don't hear things like this very often, but I heard, what would you call it, a disembodied voice saying my name, and a bell ring. And I thought, what on earth does that mean? So many years later, I learned that the bell and the thunderbolt, they didn't happen exactly at the same time, but they have specific meanings in Buddhism. And I also read that Buddhist adepts have rings with a thunderbolt ring, a Vajra ring, and a Dorje bell ring as well. So that was really interesting. Yeah, so many years later, I kind of discovered that's why I think it happened. I could be wrong. So last slide, and then I've got a question for everybody to ponder on. So chakras, energy centers. I'm going to look at the card of Seuss at the bottom right with the wings. It's a symbol, as we know, used to represent medicine, but it also relates to yoga theory. So the intertwining snakes are Ida and Pingala that I mentioned before, the currents going around the spine. And where they cross is the chakras, the wheels of energy vortexes interact. So often people wonder what on earth that means, but it's your physical body coming in contact with etheric and beyond, really. Yeah, whatever's coming in or flowing out beyond your physical body. So the chakras can also, I should say the middle part, going back to that symbol, the middle pole is obviously the spine, or the Sushumna, and the wings are the eyebrow center. So I'm going to briefly look at each chakra here. You'll notice they're all pictured rather like a flower with petals. They all have symbols inside them. They have Sanskrit symbols. Each of them have a sound you can chant. These days they're presented in the rainbow colours. Whether they were always presented like that, I'm not sure. I think that might be a modern interpretation. In the book Kundalini Yoga for the West, there's also Indian deities in each male, female deity of balance. And there's an animal, like the lower belly chakra has got a crocodile and a moon, which is interesting. So each one of the chakras as well is linked to the elements. So if you look at the one at the bottom, that's the base chakra. It's got the square that I mentioned. It's only got 4 petals and it's red. And some countries have red soil. The next one is orange, and it's the lower belly chakra. It has 6 petals. The solar plexus chakra near the belly button is yellow. I think it's got 12. I've forgotten the actual number, but you can see that each time is becoming more and more complex. The heart center, which is the balancing center between your head and your body, and that's one of the reasons it's now represented as green. The throat, they've all got Sanskrit names, which I haven't mentioned. The throat one is Vishuddha or Vishuddhi. It's blue, which represents the world mother, but it also represents communication. You can see the two petals in the Ajna or Aina chakra. So where you're bringing the dualities together into one. And finally, at the crown chakra is the 1,000-petaled lotus and that royal colour of violet, which is rather lovely. So obviously it also represents the Kundalini rising for someone who's enlightened, has moved from the red chakra at the base to the purple and beyond. So I've come to the end of my presentation, but before anybody asks any questions, I've got a question for you. So I'm going to say two things. So what are the symbols in your life that are important to you? So about 10 seconds, I want you to close your eyes and think about that. And is it a universal symbol? Is it a religious symbol? Do you have more than one, like me? Is it cultural? Or is it something deeply personal? And you can share afterwards with anybody in the group that wants to share. But just for the moment, close your eyes. I'll give you 1 minute to think about what your own personal symbols are. What's important to you? So as I would say to yoga class, now bring yourself back to the room. And if you're not sure what your symbols are, that's something you can go away and think about, and that evolves over time. And you might find you have a plethora of symbols or just one. That's really important. And if anyone's got anything else they would like to say or any questions, now is the time. We're nearly finished. Yeah.
Offhand, very well education and very good sitting in front of all of them actually technically like actually they actually have more days of them, we have more ferocious than.
Interesting. Thank you for that. Yeah, I had no idea about that one. So Auckland has more days of wind than here. I don't know your name, sorry.
The title of the presentation, transformation or transformation, how does that relate
To what I was saying.
Yeah.
I wanted to follow on from what Simon was doing earlier in the year, but just showing you different symbols that can be meaningful in your own life and which ones can represent types of self-transformation. That's what I was for. Yeah. Dean?
Mountains and waterfalls.
So Dean likes mountains and waterfalls. If anyone wants to share, I can repeat. Philip?
Oh, I, well, it's all the time, I'm very just hungry from the room. know this already, but so, for a while, I was working very hard at a book, and it was called Last Night in a Dream, and there just was, it would detail the dreams of the protagonist. And you'd never know what was going on in their life explicitly, but because you interpreted the dreams, you managed to work out what was happening in the plot, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And it was a very good idea until I realized that all of the symbols were just way too personal, and there was no grounding. You know,
Okay.
I think that's like the problem with symbol interpretation is it is so subjective, except that I don't know, some masters of the form can turn personal symbols into something that's cultural and then into something that's universal, if that makes sense. Like, how do these symbols get birthed and go from the personal consciousness then to the cultural consciousness and then into the universal consciousness?
Really very interesting what Phillips just said, that he was reading a dream book that explained people's dreams and their symbols, so they turned out to be very personal, and he's got a question for everybody, is how does a symbol get birthed from being personal, cultural, and then become universal? I can't explain that except from Jung's term, the collective consciousness. It must eventually go into the collective consciousness of everybody.
Yeah.
But not to start with, obviously.
Yeah, I don't think you can explore this area without running into Carl Jung. He said that, you know, God speaks in signs and symbols, and often the soul speaks in mythology. We have mythological. And so we have, you know, for example, say, you know, there's an aspect of the self which, you know, imagine can speak to you like a human. But what if there's a deep aspect of our subconscious which is speaking to us not in words, but in the way it expresses itself is through dreams and signs and symbols. So there's a deep part of ourselves that do that. And that's what Carl Jung was very interested in. And yes, it's pretty cool.
We're doing the right style.
Maybe you can come up and repeat that one. Like, I don't know if I can put it into words.
It was, you had to be there.
So Blake was talking about Jung and signs and symbols and their meanings, and
You can show you as well. And,
Yeah.
was asking where to start
he's got a number of books, but this one's particularly good. Some things you might not agree with now because it's written some time ago, so they might be kind of sexist, maybe, if you know what I mean. But I found this one very good. It's got a mandala on the front of it. It certainly explains a lot. Yeah, I'm going to put them on the table anyway. So has anybody else on the floor got a comment or a question?
I'm just very sincere with an electrician, positive and negative symbols which have become universal.
Oh, wow. So Brett was saying as an electrician, there's positive and negative symbols that have become universal. That would be right. Like the plus and the minus, and it's also maths as well, isn't it? Yeah.
A lot of the Aboriginal kind of art cave paintings that have been found all throughout Australia. You know, at first when the Westerners found them, they were like, oh, these are just spirals or something. But they were specifically created to actually induce almost kind of like a transformational trance state. And so they would be, they were created much more for a kind of divine purpose.
Thank you, Ali.
Too, particularly your voice, and there's you can do with singing or chanting in particular. That repetition that you do yourself physically, I think lays the stage or sets the stage for clarity and you know, the next level that you are, the non-matter level, so that so that it's that basis. It's hard to say it's a repetition of, but when you look at a picture, you're looking at the repetition that's still there. But I know, I suppose I can speak for myself, is that when I've done some chanting, and really with the Japanese style, was a Japanese type of group, with all this chanting, I could then receive messages.
What was the group?
Oh, I can't remember, to be honest, but we did it out in a place in my room. But it was everywhere, I think, and I could then, you know, when you wonder if the spirit can communicate with you and the mediums and they get this and they get that and blah, blah, blah. Well, I actually found that when I did the meditation, you know, and the way it did like this, and this chanting and speaking, that yes, I could get a communication with things, so that it had that effect. Yeah, that's.
Certain channels, yeah,
Yeah.
that's generally.
So essentially Louise was talking about chanting and repetition and the effects that it has.
And Ali was talking about Aboriginal art, representing invoking trances. and
Yeah, because
connecting
the
with
trance
divine.
state, you know, the trance state's a way to access those, you know, it's like in the waking life, you know, the question is, how can I tap into maybe spirit or subconscious elements, and the trance state is a way of doing that.
We've
And
also got,
repetition is a big way of getting into
we've got
it.
3 comments, sorry Blake, and
All good.
somebody online might want to speak as well.
Okay, we'll have a look at the comments. Yes, Edward, we are recording. And thanks, yeah, all thanks to Pam. Anyone online want to make a comment? Questions? Chris, go.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Pam. Absolutely love the talk. Just want to offer a little hint to anyone that might be interested in interpreting dreams, something that works for me. When you wake and you immediately remember the dream and you instantly know that it's significant, still yourself immediately and wait. Don't strain what's it all about. Just still your mind and wait. The very first thought that comes will be the answer that the dream to whatever the dream's been trying to tell you. It might be guidance, or it might just be a clarification on something. So try it. Works for me. Thank you, Pam.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
About spirals too, is they can either be kind of positive and negative, and that you can go inwards, but it's, I mean, when you look at it from Eden, it can either be something that's a peak, or it's a cave running through. And so you can kind of go and move into it, and which way you can.
So Dean was talking about spirals and how you can perceive them in different ways, go in or without, and how they operate. Okay. Someone's online. All right. Any other comments or thoughts or questions, Dean? All right. I'd like to thank you, Pam. Oh, sorry, Gary.
Spiral rotates, spirals in different forms, you produce that people forms.
Oh, yes.
False galaxies, yeah. When centrifugal force gets applied, element starts separating out so you can see what's actually forming. It's an incredible powerful spiral.
Thank you for that side of it. Power of the spiral.
Yeah.
And the formation of galaxies and stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll officially close the session.